Hey guys, this is Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about fairies. Yeah, we got another Pauper deck tech thingy, and this time we're talking about fairies, right? So this is going to be sweet, of course. Going to be a lot of spell stutter sprites. Going to be a lot of other interesting stuff. So let's get into it. Yeah, so nice thing about fairies, this is a super fun deck, a super sweet deck, and one of the better decks in Pauper actually, which is pretty nice. Definitely a sort of aggro control kind of style of deck, and so of course that means we got cheap creatures that cost 1 or 2 mana that do all sorts of things, as well as a lot of card drawing, stuff like that. Typical sort of aggro control sort of shell. Very big emphasis on tempo. And yeah, there's some ninjas too. We got some new cards, or basically like one new card, right, from the new Kamigawa set. So a lot of ninjas, a lot of ninjas, a lot of ninjutsu. It's very sweet. And of course, one of the nice things about Pauper, it still has a ton of really powerful blue cards at common, if you can believe it. There are a lot of them. There are a lot of them. And there's a lot of neat stuff going on here. All right, so here we go. We got this deck, and yeah, we're gonna go over every card again, just like last time. I figure, maybe that's probably a little bit more useful, even though like people should probably know half these cards already. But there's a lot of really, really good things here to talk about. Um, Obviously, we're not really talking about the mana base because, whatever. Everyone knows what islands and mountains do. Snow-covered islands and mountains and volatile fort and ash barrens is basically, sort of basic land cycling thing. Everyone, that's not really interesting, not really worthwhile talking about too much other than what I just said. But the rest we'll talk about, and we'll talk a little bit about the sideboard as well. Okay, so let's talk about the creatures, right? This is a pretty important part. So we got the fairies, which is Fairy Seer and Spell Starter Sprite. Fairy Seer, definitely, well, you're only really one drop creature, and this thing is sweet. 1 mana, 1/1 flying, so it's a flying man, but with upside of Scry 2. Very cool. I mean, it's literally a flying man. It's looks like a dude, like a blue man group guy. I don't know what's going on there. Spell Stutter Sprite, 2 mana, 1/1 flying flash, counters a spell. Great. Really, really good 2-for-1. Really awesome. Definitely a really nice piece of counter magic, countering tons of cheap stuff. So yeah, there you go. Obviously can't hit more expensive spells like, say, Mirror Enforcer, right? You'll basically almost never have 7 fairies in play for that to ever happen. But counters a lot of really, really relevant stuff. Then we have Aggro-Bolus. It's just basically a decent blocker as well as card pops, right? Basically lets us get a instance or sorcery from the top 3 cards. So again, we have what, a third of the deck is instants and or sorceries. So it's going to be pretty sweet there, as well as, again, synergy with some other cards that we have. We have Moon Circuit Hacker, a new card from the new Kamigawa set. Ninjutsu 1 blue, which is really great. And it loots, so draw and discard when it deals damage, deals combat damage, I should say. So that's very great. Same thing with Ninja of the Deep Hours, except that just draws a card in general. And Crimson Fleet Commodore. This isn't always seen in these blue-red style of fairy decks, but it is nice as a 1 or 2 of, just because, well, it gives you the Monarch, and with all these random dorks, you can really prevent them from getting through, and then you get to draw a bunch of extra cards. And yeah, pretty sweet, pretty sweet. So Crimson Fleet Commodore, pretty nice card to have in play. Alright, so let's look at some of these spells, and they're pretty good. So Bolt, of course, I mean, you can't get better than Bolt. If we're talking about commons, Lightning Bolt, very good, very, very credible. Big fan of Bolt. Really good. And Scred, this one is sort of a sleeper, right? People may or may not know about it. Of course, this has been played in some of the Scred red decks in Modern for some time, but Scred is very good because it gives red decks, or these red X decks, the ability to deal with, greater than 3 toughness creatures for 1 mana at instant speed, and basically every land is either a snow permanent or fetches a snow permanent. So yeah, Scred is invaluable in this style of deck. Things like Gurmag Anglers or Mirror Enforcers or Annoyed Altosaurs or all sorts of big boys. Scred answers them pretty easy peasy. And now we have another flex slot, which would be Fire Ice. Not all decks play this card, of course. This card is very good. Printed as a common in Ultimate Masters, I believe, which I was like, wow, I didn't know it was printed at a common, which I love. And again, I'm definitely playing this in my own list, which is very similar to the list I have posted, although I think I don't have as many the pirate guys. But yeah, Fire Ice, very sweet card, big fan, very powerful, tap stuff, kills things. You definitely want to be able to deal with like the go wide swarm decks full of cheap creatures and stuff. Those are very difficult to deal with. And of course our sideboard will reflect that, and sometimes our main deck as well. So yeah, Fire Ice does a ton, never dead, really great card. And now we have some of the draw cards, Brainstorm and Preordain. Of course these cards are very strong. There's not really much else to say. They're great cards, yeah. So what more do you want? What more do you want? So yeah, I'm a big fan. Yeah, really great consistency tools. They only cost a blue mana. They fix your mana. They make sure you don't flood out or not draw enough lands, so on and so forth. All the things that cantrips do. I mean, it's not really fair to call them cantrips because they do so much. But yeah, you get the point. All right, and for the last part of our interaction, we have counter magic. We have some counter magic in Dispel, Spell Pierce, and Counterspell. Counterspell, of course, is a 4 of, just generically good against basically every card. Spell Pierce is a nice 1 of against anything that's spell heavy. And as well as just a nice 1 of, just because like it's mere presence. Like, okay, this deck has 1 mana open. Can I resolve this spell? Who knows? Do they have a spell pierce? So it can definitely create issues for your opponent, just the mere threat of it, even if you only play 1. So I love playing the 1 spell pierce. And Dispel counters instants. No muss, no fuss, anytime, always, and forever. So good stuff there. All right, so there's a lot of different things you can choose. I like Terramorphic Expanse, like 2 Terramorphic Expanse I think is great. Like 19 to 20 land or so, 2 Terramorphic Expanse, very sweet card. Frantic Inventory is another card drawing option. That's a more recent one. That one's pretty neat. Electrickery is sort of a pre-sideboard option, asymmetrical board wipe against the sort of go wide decks, token style decks, that kind of stuff. Echoing Truth, this is another great card. Good against, well, obviously very good against tokens, and just as a sort of utility, all-purpose sort of bounce spell. Gorilla Shaman as a way to, again, pre-sideboard against the affinity decks. Ponder or Braid, so just more consistency and removal and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of really powerful cards in this deck, I think, which is probably why it's one of the more played style of decks. It's, well, I shouldn't say this version in particular, but any of the Faeries decks. So whether it's blue-black, which I think is the more played version, versus the blue-red, but again, they're still very powerful. Being able to play, Lightning Bolt is nothing to sneeze at for sure. So a lot of really great cards here. So it definitely feels more like you're playing like a slightly worse Legacy deck, which is saying something, right? In a format like Pauper. So pretty cool, pretty good stuff. However, still, there's not a really good clock. So the deck can just sort of run into issues where, if your opponent just eventually kills all your stuff, you're going to have a hard time closing the game out because you don't have anything like Murktide or something like that. Or even something that's more resilient to removal like True Name Nemesis. So there are weaknesses. You do have a weakness also for, again, -1/-1 effects. Stuff like that can be a kind of a pain for you. But there are, again, a lot of really great options in the sideboard: Red, Beb, Crypt, Dispel, Annul, etc. Lots of really sweet sideboard options for this deck. And the nice thing about this is, again, just these tempo decks don't really have a ton of super bad matchups. Very few, depending on the format, if any. And so that's why I like this deck. It's got a lot of nice tricks, a lot of nice combat tricks, a lot of actual card advantage compared to a lot of other tempo decks in other formats, right? So, think of Ninja, the Deep Hours, or even the Moon Circuit Hacker guy as an additional way to filter away lands and bad cards and matchups. That's pretty sweet. So this deck has a lot going on, and of course, not even talking about Monarch, not even talking about ninjutsuing back, say, your Spell Stutter Sprite, right? And then recasting the Spell Stutter Sprite in combat to counter stuff. Yeah, really tricky stuff, really sneaky stuff. A lot of great options. Definitely very powerful, very consistent deck that doesn't really fall into, doesn't really have the same issues as other decks. Just because you can play these really powerful removal spells paired with these really powerful cantrips and stuff, and a pretty solid, decent suite of creatures. Certainly not too powerful, at least in the context of current Pauper at the moment. But definitely pretty sweet. So I'm a big fan of this deck. This deck is super fun to play. Definitely there's a lot of little micro decisions, right? Like with any sort of tempo style deck, aggro control style deck, you're always, there's a lot of little decisions that certainly can matter, right? Because a lot of times the margins you're playing for are pretty small, right? The margins between victory and defeat. So yeah, but you do get to play with fairies, so that is, I mean, that's a good draw, right? Spellstar Sprite, great art, definitely a really sweet card. I like playing with fairies, and of course I like ninjas. I love Ninja of the Deep Hours. Definitely drawn a bunch of cards with that guy over the years, so yeah, really great stuff. So yeah, there you go. This deck is no joke. It's no laughing matter. There's a lot of really great stuff that you can do, a really flexible sideboard. The main deck is mostly set in stone with some flex slots, so you can do all sorts of different things depending on your metagame, adding different 1-ofs and 2-ofs and things like that. So yeah, pretty cool. So yeah, there you go. I mean, there's not a lot to say. I don't think, you guys are going to be too confused by this kind of thing, but it's a sweet deck. Plays like a lot of other aggro control decks. Has some of the same weaknesses, but in some respects, some of those are mitigated, right? So it does have card advantage engines, is able to really do grind out games, thanks to certain mechanics like Monarch or whatever. So yeah, there you go, guys. So thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this, and have a great day.